Well, two reasons. One, we definitely need more locally grown produce in the state for our local food systems. And number two, that's the focus our grant requires. So here we are. You'll get to know us all pretty well, but do you all project team just want to do a quick shout out to the folks? Annalisa?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Annalisa, and I'm an extension educator at the University of Minnesota in food safety for fruit and vegetable farmers. So I work on a team with Natalie and others, and we work around the state providing technical assistance and education and outreach with produce growers. So my area of expertise is GAPS, Good Agricultural Practices, the FSMA, Produce Safety Rule, and other just kind of on-farm practices for fruit and veg growers around food safety. I'll send it to Natalie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Natalie. It's nice to see some people we know and some new faces. So I'm on the same team as Annalisa. I work as an extension educator with vegetable crops. And so I work with kind of everything related to production, soil health, nutrient management, crop planning, etc. Ryan, do you want to go next?
Sure. You're gonna have to put up with me here later too, but I'm Ryan Pesch, extension educator. I work in ag business management, so we work on trying to figure out how to make money doing this kind of stuff. It's really what it comes down to. So is Brett here? Jane?
I am not seeing him on the participant list yet, but Brett Olson should be joining us. He's from Renewing the Countryside, and he'll be talking about how to make connections with buyers. And I'm Jane Jewett with the Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Agriculture at the University of Minnesota. And Emily, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hey everyone, Emily Reno. I'm a partner with Creating Community Consulting and the founder of Mezclada. So project coordinator for this.
Great. All right, so here's our session format for today. We might shift this up just a little bit, and Ryan is going to give you a 5-minute break in here when he's doing his content portion. So our project goal, really our overall goal, is to grow the local wholesale capacity for produce in Minnesota. And the way we're doing that in this project is to train you all in needed skills to be able to launch a wholesale enterprise and then push you to do it. What happened there? Okay, so here's our training topics, which you have heard about before in our introductory webinars, but just a quick recap. Business planning and marketing mix is going to be handled by Ryan. Production and efficient scaling up by Natalie. On-farm food safety by Annalisa. Licensing and regulations by me. Packing and packaging will go back to Ryan, and then Brett, connecting with buyers. And here is the schedule, which we will keep reminding you about. It should also be on your calendars. And then after those sessions are completed, after April 4th, then we're going to move into some other things involving small groups and online work sessions and in-person work sessions, and we'll be working with you to help you develop your written plan for each of the topic areas. You'll get advice and feedback from the project team members and from each other, and then start approaching buyers. So the plan is to have you launch or expand your sales by May of 2024. So you've got almost 1.5 years to kick that off. It could be sales to wholesale buyers or agreements or contracts, because when the project wraps up in early 2024, it's possible that you won't have actually had product available to make sales yet, but agreements will count. And then there is going to be that $500 mini grant that'll be available on a reimbursement basis, which means you'll pay for the things first and then submit receipts to get reimbursed for allowed expenses. And we'll go into that in a lot more detail later on. You don't have to worry about it right now, but just to remind you that that's kind of the little plum hanging out there at the end if you do all your work. All right, at this point, I am going to turn it over to Emily Reno to get us rolling.
Find my mute button there. Yeah, thank you. So I think what we're going to start with is we're going to throw folks into some breakout rooms, and you will have the opportunity to chat with a facilitator. So we've got our project team here. How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not seeing Brett yet, so I'm thinking that we'll want to divide people into 4 groups. I'm just going to make sure I've got math here right. So that puts us at about 7 people per room. And we've got some questions that I'm just going to throw some of these in the chat now. And then
Looks like Brett is coming in, Emily.
oh, good. Okay. So we'll do 5 rooms then. And this will be an opportunity for you guys to get to know each other. Our facilitators have the questions, but I'll make sure that these go in as well. The formatting is kind of off, but these will be helpful if our facilitators, if you want to take a look at those. And then we'll get these set up. Okay, so then room 2, Jane, you want to share anything from that conversation?
Sure, yep. So the group I was with had Mary Lou Larson, who's a very small scale urban farmer, and then Brad Freyholtz and Stephen Van Dyke, who are larger scale farmers who are looking at diversifying into wholesale vegetable sales. So really a group with very little vegetable sales experience at all. So, which is great because that's what we're here for, right? We did talk about the hubs a little bit, the aggregation model of sales, and there's interest in that. And a suggestion to possibly have maybe one of the in-person trainings based on type of operation rather than region. So that was interesting for us as the project team to think about, that people with more similar types of operations might be able to learn more from each other if we divide it that way.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jane. Okay, next up is Ryan.
Yeah, my group, a few are already in some wholesale outlets and working with them. So part of the goals, some goals were around, how do we better focus on particular crops for wholesale was one person's goal. Or just exploring, how best to get into other wholesale markets and new outlets. So there's kind of that diversity strategy. In terms of, we were talking a bit about, potential in-person meetups. I feel like there's a lot of interest in, Cody's talking about, hey, I'd love to see sort of like packing standards in action. What does this look like? And there's interest in kind of getting on site with a wholesaler and kind of interfacing with them to kind of really understand their concerns and interests and some of those packing standards, stuff like that. And people said, hey, they're willing to go a couple hours, right? We're all rural people, and then we had Renee, our token Michigander, who informed us a little bit about Michigan geography. So that was nice, and she was okay hanging out with Minnesotans for a little bit.
I love it. Awesome. Okay, so then up next would be Annalisa.
Yeah, we had a nice variety. We had some of our participants have definitely been growing for a while and have a substantial amount of produce been selling at farmers markets and are starting to sell through those aggregation hubs, but looking to expand more into the hubs and also take advantage of the new farm to school opportunities. And there seemed to be a lot of interest in those school markets. One of our participants was pretty new, actually didn't have anything for sale yet, but has been growing kind of as their family. And then one of our participants wasn't growing produce for sale right now, but wild rice and a big maple syrup operation. So everyone was really interested in kind of figuring out which products worked best for wholesale, knowing that they can grow a pretty big variety, but kind of focusing in on those products that would be best suited for wholesale and especially a school market, knowing that it might be more of those storage crops. There was definitely interest in the in-person meetups. We were saying, I said, how far is too far? And we were saying more like an hour and a half each way drive was kind of the tone of the room, people looking to not probably drive more than that. So that's just some thoughts for us. And we didn't really talk about what the topics would be when we met up, but I assume that the things that people mentioned before, some of those pack standards when we're selling to wholesale would be really useful, and hearing directly from the buyers themselves about what they're looking for.
Awesome, thank you. And then we've got Brett.
Yeah, we had a diverse group in our room as well. It was fun to get to know them and hear a little of their backstory. So there's again a pretty wide variety of experience levels and size of the farms, and some people looking to just add more wholesale to an existing more conventional farm, or farm grain and livestock farm, and add this as a new enterprise. That of course brings up some really good questions on like time management when you don't have a lot of labor, like how can we manage for that? And then that focusing in on maybe what to grow and how much to grow, and specifically a better understanding of pricing, like finding that sweet spot, like how do we know if this is fair or right, and who do we compete with? And so that was basically, and then the same things you brought up. We didn't really talk about distance, but we did have a few people that weren't too far from each other. So, I think we'll have to figure that out on the fly, I'm guessing.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's really helpful feedback for us as a planning team as we sort of move into the next steps of the training. And so what we wanted to do next was just kind of go over a little bit of the logistics of kind of how the course is laid out, and some of the things that will be resources to you throughout this process. That way it's a little bit clear, and then we'll jump into some of the stuff that Ryan's got to share. So I just wanted to go over this document that I had put together, and this one we will be making available to you. It's not available yet, but we will make sure that it is soon. So this is going to be just a document that we're going to put into a shared Google folder for all of you to have as a reference. I love having stuff like this, kind of like a syllabi, right? Just like the warehouse of all the information that you need. So we've got just the dates listed here for you as a reminder. The time that we had settled on was from 9 to 11:30. And we do recognize there were a number of people that had reached out and said, this doesn't work with my work schedule. We, as you can see, are recording this meeting. And so the idea is that you can make up a session by doing, the homework and tasks assigned with whatever that person is presenting, and just, follow up with the recording of the presentation. We've got contact information of the experts in the room here. So the support team, we're here to be a resource for you, and we want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us. So this kind of provides some information there for that. And then there's going to be a couple of links that are really critical for you to have. So this one will take you to the course page on MISA's website. And so we're going to continue to update this information and put any important links or downloads that you might need there, especially if you have any issues accessing or navigating Google Drive, which we recognize might be new for some of you. We also have created a shared Google folder. And so this is a place where you can access some of those homework assignments, download information that you need to. And I think that we're going to organize it so that we can have it so that you submit your homework via a form versus having everyone dump their information into a shared folder. And a big part of that is just protecting your intellectual property and privacy, right? We want to make sure that that stays with you, but that our trainers have an opportunity to review some of the work that you're doing. In terms of scheduling, the way that I set it up so far is that I had sent out calendar invites via Google that include a Zoom link in the description of the invite. If there's any button that says join Google Meets, don't do it. That's not going to be our primary platform. So I apologize. Sometimes it automatically gets added. Don't click that. You will find yourself in the wrong virtual space. So Zoom is the way to go for this training. And then I'm going to be sending out reminder emails to all of you either the day before or the morning of that has that Zoom link again, because I recognize some people don't use Google Calendars. They don't use digital calendars at all. Email can sometimes work best. So we're here to meet you where you're at and make sure that this is accessible for you. And like I mentioned before, you can make up a session by watching a recording of the meeting, completing those tasks assigned. We'll make sure that we send a follow-up email after each session that kind of outlines, okay, here's what we said we wanted you to do. By what date, ideally, would be good to make this kind of progress. We're going to be working with our trainers to set benchmarks for some of that homework so that you can kind of have some smaller chunks that you get assigned and sort of work on a little bit at a time. If you have any tech questions, feel free to reach out to me. WhatsApp is the best way to reach me right now. It's a free app that you can use. It's amazing. If you haven't used it before, there's an awesome function to send audio messages. So you're more than welcome to record, a question, send it my way. It works via Wi-Fi, and that's my strongest signal where I'm operating from currently. Email is also great. I check my email religiously just because I have to for work. So we can set up a time to chat, and that will be great. And then just a couple of last notes here. What does it look like to successfully complete this course? Well, one, showing up, right? This is a really unique opportunity where you get to be surrounded by a bunch of other people who have a lot of knowledge and wisdom and passion about getting into the wholesale space. So let's take advantage of that opportunity, right? You are resources to each other in addition to the folks from Extension, Renewing the Countryside, right? All of these places that we've brought in for you. Please ask questions as they arise. Use the chat to your advantage. Don't hold back. We're here to help. Feel free to direct message me if you've got any questions about connectivity. If your Wi-Fi isn't the greatest, feel free to turn your video off. We recognize, rural broadband is not the greatest all the time. And then, making sure that you're completing your homework and tasks. We have assigned things very intentionally. There's a reason why we're doing this and trying to push you to get to that point. And doing so will also make you eligible for that mini grant, as Jane had mentioned. And lastly, and I think this is something that Ryan's going to get on, is the idea of goal setting, right? It's going into this experience with some goals, making them a little bit more specific, concrete, and then making progress towards those goals is really what we want to help you with. So with that, I know that was a lot of information, and I feel like I'm just going to pause there and ask if there's any initial questions, and then we'll kind of turn it over to Ryan.
This is John here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, John.
One of the things I was thinking about, I don't know, when we come from audited code, so we come out complete business plan then? Is that what I'm understanding?
The question is, if you've come from a background where you've already done some business planning,
It will finish with the course or with the training, we come up with a business plan.
okay. So the question is, if you are going to come away with a business plan from this course,
Yeah,
from what
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand, that is not the intention.
Okay.
It's really more specific to wholesale, and please, like, facilitators jump in, right? But from my understanding, it's really about making some concrete progress towards setting up contracts, getting systems in place, learning about wholesale sales, what's going to make you successful in that, doing some of those tours of seeing places on site, to really dive into that. But it's not my understanding that you're going to come away with a business plan based on
Oh.
the homework and tasks assigned.
I mean, I'll jump in and just like thinking about the homework here today, John. I mean, I'm going to assign you some things to kind of get you thinking through your marketing costs and put out some targets, maybe for, who to focus on. I mean, I think if you added all the little pieces across all of these,
Mhm.
you could think of it as a marketing plan, but we're not asking you to do like give us a 10-page marketing plan, John, by the end of this course. It's not that formal, but there's pieces I think that will definitely are part of a business plan, no doubt. So yeah, we want to get you to the point where you're like, I feel good about, hey, I'm ready. And I got an idea about how I'm going to approach getting into wholesale. But there's not necessarily a formal marketing plan that's going to be required in order to do that.
Can I just add, like, if that is your goal, we are here to support you in developing that. So like as far as people want to go, we're here to support that, but we're not going to have really rigid expectations if people don't want to take it that far.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent question, John. What else? What other questions do people have?
I might ask Annalisa to just jump in and clarify about the produce safety training as well, because we had a question from someone about whether they would be certified after this course. And yeah, Annalisa, explain that, please.
Sure. So the question was just what will you be certified? So for produce safety, you can get a gap audit, which is an audit on some of your products. That's something that you would pay for, and that will get you into a market that requires it. So you go through the Department of Agriculture, you pay for that gap audit. It's an annual audit. So attending a training and developing your food safety plan and developing your records are the prerequisite to getting that gap audit. But attending this training or attending a produce safety training that that you attended outside of this course does not certify you. It gets you the knowledge and gets you developing your own food safety plan so that if you want to then go ahead and get that audit, you can. And I've helped many growers get an audit who need one. And so this is absolutely the right place to start to get that. And it becomes a lot easier once you have some training and some guidance.
Awesome. Thank
And
you.
it's so nice to see how, I don't know about a big scale. I do see a big scale vegetable washing, and I'm like, wow, you got that. But for me, I know I'm okay with my 3 compartment sinks, stands. And so it's just the part about doing what makes sense, keeping your food, especially if you use any fertilizer that has manure in it or whatever, and keeping your food clean and just having, and it's so cool because you can have a wash stand, you just get your 3 tubs, you got to have it, because the farm at the Arb taught us how to just use like the wooden stands, and you put the 3 different buckets in them, and you fill them with your clean, with your water, and from the garden, you go and you put your things in there. And from there, you can take it to the food shelf. So I don't have much experience on putting them in the little cardboard, blue things for my berries. I need supplies. Like I need to go to Jordan Seeds, or where's that farm supply store? I need to know that. And I need a scale because I haven't been weighing a darn thing.
I think you're going to get all of that information and more, Stacy. So you're in the right spot. What other questions do people have? Okay, well, you'll have plenty more opportunities if you do have them. Also, feel free to throw them in the chat, right, as stuff comes up. But I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
All right, great. Well, thanks, Emily. I'm sitting looking at myself. I'm kind of like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now, where you only see one side of my face or something. There's like this weird shadow thing. I might fix that. But I'm going to get us going here. I have a crutch. I only speak with slides, so just bear with me here, folks. Some people aren't as elegant extemporaneous speaking as my friend Emily Reno here, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it. So in terms of getting going here, we're almost up to 10. I'm going to get a little bit past 10, get us going a little bit on this content. We'll take a little bit of a break. I got some activities built into this, so you don't have to just sit and listen to Ryan talk at you the whole time. I'm going to try to engage you a little bit as just to kind of make this stuff interesting. So this is kind of business planning 101 here as we talk. Let me make sure these things can move forward. Okay, very good. I'll talk a little bit about, don't you hate that when you go to a presentation, you're like, I'm a presenter, I'm now going to talk about myself, but I'm going to talk about myself just a little bit as a point of context. And then we'll move into the material. Yes, I'm an extension educator, and I work in ag business management. So this whole idea, I specialize in direct marketing and also working with specialty crops. So like Natalie and Annalise and I will work together in extension with some of these specialty crop folks. So there's my official picture. Every at least male extension educator, we live in plaid or something. It's kind of our uniform. But there's Ryan Pesch, extension educator. But I also moonlight. For the past 20 years, I've been Ryan Pesch, a proprietor of Lida Farm. I think I'm in year 19 here. I did a few years in the Twin Cities before I came up here in Otter Tail County. So I'm just south of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And in that time, I've grown sustainable produce for 7 of those years. I was a certified organic operator, primarily direct marketing, and I've kind of engaged in a lot of different market channels and outlets in that time. You see me standing by our self-serve farm stand. That's now in year 15, I believe, this season. We've done CSA since 2004. I've sold to restaurants. I sell to a grocery store. I've operated another farm stand on consignment with another business. I sold to a food hub. I don't know, there's a whole bunch of things I've engaged in. And I've always said that to some degree, I'm a better salesperson than I am a grower. And so I really have no problem selling things. Sort of makes me more of but you still have to grow this stuff, right? And so over that time, since 2004, since we've been here, we've gone everywhere from starting off year 1 at half an acre, selling exclusively at a farmer's market, a Saturday farmer's market. And we've transitioned to other markets over those years. We've got as high as 6.5, almost 7 acres of produce at one time. And over the past 6-7 years, I've cut down from 6.5 acres down to a little less than 4 acres and doing about the same amount of sales. And so one thing I'd like to recognize here is a lot of us are all in different places. And that's an important acknowledgement. I like to, I've had this shtick for a while. If you've had to listen to me before, I like to talk about the 3 commandments. farm marketing, right? I'm certainly not Moses, coming down with 10 rules on 2 tablets or what have you, but I've got 3 at least. And I like to throw those out as kind of some framing for you as you think about business planning and where you might go with wholesale. And lastly, and I think that, like I said, I've alluded to this, what's most important is you assess where you're at and get strategic about where you go next. And so I'm going to introduce some analysis tools for you to employ. And I'm going to give you a couple for homework to kind of think through how things are going now, and think through what it might look like as you engage in a wholesale outlet or a wholesale market channel. All right. So marketing 101, right on. A lot of times we use the term marketing and everyone's just like, oh, you mean like we should put more ads in the newspaper? That's marketing, right? But really, talk about marketing as a concept. It really is everything that comes between us. That's us on the left there. We're the sheaves of wheat. That's the farm, right? Between the farm and the end customer. And so there's a lot of components that come into play there. Yes, pricing, and yes, transportation. Yes, what is it that we're going to raise that's going to get to that end customer? There's a lot of little pieces along the way. And so I would say it's more than just advertising, right? I've been at a farmer's market. I remember with my fellow vendors at the DL farmers market, we sold for 14 years. And we're like, hey, there's just not a lot of people here. We need more marketing. And it's kind of like, we need more cowbell. If we just had more advertising is what he meant, we would have more people here. And I've always made the point, like, you could have the world's best advertising or promotional efforts and still fail. So my thought experiment for those of you that sell at a farmer's market is, what if you had this ad executive from Chicago who saw you every Saturday and they're like, Ryan, I like what you're doing. I'm going to buy $1 million in ads for you. I will do all the creative for you. And they're going to, we'll even put the ads on the Super Bowl, right? And then all these people come to your farm stand on a Saturday morning, and all you're selling are scrunty beets in a dirty Walmart bag. I guarantee you're not going to be successful. That is advertising, that image and promotion, these promotional efforts are only one part of marketing. It's definitely more than advertising and promotions. It is merchandising, right? How are we presenting a product? And what does that product look like? What's the quality of that product? So again, scrunty, misshapen beets in the dirty Walmart bag. That's my example of, like, you're not doing well with merchandising. Is very different than a well-organized and well-presented product at a farmer's market display, or for wholesale, coming tomatoes in a 2-layer box or something like that. Is that box clean? Is it are the tomatoes consistent? If the customer is looking for consistent tomatoes, there's a lot of details in terms of that merchandising part, which is part of marketing. There's customer service. Yes, this is my challenge. My challenge is customer service. I'm very talkative and friendly, but I'm a completely disorganized person. My wife is the only person that organizes the farm, I swear. And so, yes, good advertising. People hear about me. I have good product. I have good merchandising, but someone sends me an email and I don't get back to them for 2 weeks. That's a problem, right? Or think of yourself in a farmer's market situation. You're just an ornery cuss that nobody wants to deal with. That's also a customer service issue. Product mix. What are you growing? A lot of times as farmers, we sort of feel like we're just sort of stuck with what the market tells us we need to grow, or I'm forced growing this. Well, that's not true. We choose what products we grow. And I heard a lot of conversation earlier about that. Like, I want to figure out what product what are the crops I should be growing, and which one should I drop? If I'm driving myself crazy with 40 different crops, in terms of wholesale, man, I'm going to focus in on some things. I know Natalie is going to talk about that in terms of production. But depending on who we're targeting, we might have a different product mix. We might go long on staples and short on specialty crops, right? or if we're focusing on some, you know, high buck, you know, Volvo or Lexus drivers, we're maybe just going to do high dollar, you know, greens and microgreens, and not do, you know, bulk potatoes at a low value, right? So what is our product mix? And lastly, pricing. It's certainly a component of where we need to be in order to fit into any given market. And so I know that's definitely one concern that always comes up. Hey, Ryan, I'm interested in selling more. I'm interested in wholesale, but I'm not interested in wholesale pricing. And so again, this is just something for us to investigate and determine whether this works in our current business and how we want to market our products. And we'll talk more about that. Moving on a little bit with the language of marketing. I will be talking about a marketing mix, and I use the term marketing mix in part because oftentimes those of us that have been in produce a while sell through a range of outlets or a range of market channels, right? We sell grocery, we sell to farm stand, we sell to farmers market, you know, we sell to this restaurant and that restaurant, and all together, that's our marketing mix. It's how we sell what we sell. Some of those may have high prices, low volume. Some might be high volume, lower prices. But what matters to us at the end of the day is how that mix is working, right? If I go through the end of the season, I just say, you know what, I'm selling these high priced items, but I have really high maintenance customers and I'm worn out by it. Maybe I want to shift my marketing mix to some wholesale to just change how I'm selling what I'm selling, and vice versa. You might have, hey, I'm selling a lot of stuff, but my pricing's terrible because I'm selling it all through this wholesale outlet. And at the end of the day, I'm not making enough profit. So again, you might switch a little more to some retail outlets as opposed to 100% wholesale. And it's this mix that we're trying to figure out, where's the sweet spot. And you decide on your marketing mix. You get to decide what you get to engage in. I like to say that each has a cost and each has an opportunity, right? Wholesale might have the opportunity of more sales, more volume, right? But it also will have a cost. And some of these are very particular to you. If the wholesaler is 3 states away, there's a very high cost. If the wholesaler is 1 block away, you can have a pretty low cost. Or some of my my Amish friends that I've engaged with, they have Nash Finch come and pick up at the farm. Well, what's the cost of that? And that might be a low cost. Or if you're paying somewhere that's shipping directly, it could be a high cost. It depends, right? In terms of that particular outlet. Another language, I'm going to be going back and forth between market channel or marketing channel and outlet. And just so we're clear on that, what I mean by market channel is, you see here, these are all schools, right? And you see down there, those are shopping carts. So those are grocery stores. A market outlet is, so for example, I say, hey, I market my produce through schools, through groceries, and at a farmer's market. I have 3 market channels: schools, groceries, farmers markets. As far as schools, I might sell to 3 different schools, and those are 3 different outlets. I might sell to 2 different grocery stores. Those are 2 outlets in the same market channel. And so this matters for me as sort of an ag business analyst type. If we have good organized data, we should be able to do the math and say, what is our return for each outlet? And if we could roll up those numbers, if we roll up the numbers for all the schools, how is that particular market channel doing? Are my sales to schools good or bad? Are my sales to that 1 school good or bad? And is my return to that 1 school good or bad? Part of this is sort of a record keeping issue, but it's important to know that we want to be able to examine both the channel and the outlet. And sometimes I'll be talking about one or the other, right? And that's that bit of that language. So introducing, sort of illustrating this point about marketing channels or market channels. I just got some little pictures here. If we look here, let me just talk about my own market channels for a while. At the top here, for the longest time, I did CSA. My main market channels were CSA, farm stand, and farmers market. So the Detroit Lakes Farmers Market, farm stand, both at Falls Bacon and Fergus Falls, as well as at the end of our driveway, and then CSA, where we started delivering direct to door and moved to drop sites. And so each of those are presented here. You see the CSA box, the farmers market, and the farm stand in the upper left. These are what I'll call retail market channels, right? I'm selling direct to customer. Somebody comes to the farm stand, it's like a household. It had been some businesses do, but for the most part, they're households, they're families. They just stop by, they buy stuff at the self-service farm stand, drive away. CSA, I arrange directly with the family. I get the box to them or they pick up the box, right? Farmers market, same thing. Whereas down here, bottom right, we have our wholesale market channels. On the right, traditional, let's just call this traditional wholesale. This is you're selling directly to Nash Finch, a wholesaler that supplies grocery stores, or you sell through a wholesale broker who sells to Nash Finch. There's not a lot of produce brokers per se that way in Minnesota. They're more with our friend in Michigan, no doubt. That's sort of a more mature wholesale market. Or you sell, somebody in my group is talking about the wholesaler that supplies Super One up in the Northeast, Russ Davis. Russ Davis is a produce wholesaler. You'd get produce to a Russ Davis in Minnesota. And again, that's a very particular thing, that these guys work at a very big scale and they have pretty particular standards, right? And if you're tiny, they might not slot in very well. But for the sake of this course, in terms of wholesale readiness, anything that's direct to wholesale, we also call wholesale. Direct to restaurant, Riverside Coffee, I used to sell to them for about 5-6 years. Direct to grocery, you might not go through the wholesaler. You might not sell to Russ Davis, who then in turn sells to the grocery store. You might go directly to your local store, directly to your local grocery store and sell to them directly. That we would consider wholesale, for our purposes here, as well as direct to institution. Maybe it's a nursing home, maybe it's a hospital, maybe it's assisted living, maybe it's a school, right? And so it isn't wholesale per se, but it is, for our purposes, direct to a wholesale account, and some of the stuff that we'll be talking about. And again, each has a cost and each has an opportunity. There is no blanket statement I can tell you that's like, oh yeah, price your product like this for groceries, it's a slam dunk and you're going to sell pallets of produce. It doesn't work that way. Depends how far you are away from that operation, what your current pricing is, what's your level of quality, and so forth and so on. We'll dig into some of that. And so I think it's important to just think, for each one, there's a cost in terms of selling it to them, and there's also an opportunity. And we'll do this little activity, and then we're going to take a little break. And so if we think about those wholesale market channels and those wholesale outlets, either in chat or just unmute yourself and give me an answer. What do you think are some of the common costs of selling to a wholesaler?
Packaging.
Packaging, thank you. Yes.
Transportation.
Transportation, yes, thank you.
Could be labor if you're having somebody to help you harvest and wash all the stuff up.
Yep, we can have labor. We might have labor with a retail one, but yeah, we're gonna have labor, absolutely. Other ideas on costs?
Communications and correspondence.
Communications and correspondence. Yes, yes. Okay, you guys.
Liability insurances.
Liability insurances. Absolutely. Maybe.
Maybe a lower profit margin.
Maybe lower profit margin. Yep. So there's that pricing question, right? There might be lower margin. This is good. This is a good list, right? Let me go click back here. And yes, I think you guys hit on all my thinking on what are the primary costs when I'm contrasting a retail or a direct sale versus wholesale. Packaging. You're selling to a grocery, that there might be a very real packaging cost. It's like, I want a clean cardboard box. And if you're bringing tomatoes to me in a plastic bag, it ain't going to cut it. I want a cardboard box consistent with the other cardboard boxes of tomatoes I'm buying, right? So there's a packaging thing that definitely is quite a bit different than what we'll see with retail or direct to customers. And that's why we have a whole nother session on this, folks. The selling efforts, Eric hit that, right? There's communication time. I'm selling to this chef. I'm selling to this restaurant. Well, he wants me to call him or her every Tuesday at 2 p.m. And they want a list and they want the price list. And that needs to be them by noon because they need to make a decision by 3 because then dinner is going to start and they don't have time to talk to me. So what are those selling efforts? How much time is spent in that? And is there a price sheet involved? And if you're not used to like writing up a price sheet and consistently updating it with what's in season, there's a cost for you internally. It's a back office cost, but it's definitely a cost in terms of time and effort. Someone talked about mileage, travel. Yes, this is, I will say, one of the big deals for those of us in the local foods movement, right? We want to get everything sold. We want to get things from point A to point B, but we spend a lot of time going from point A to point B. And we are essentially oftentimes little trucking companies in a way that, again, we're essentially playing the retailer, right? Or we're playing the wholesaler. And so we end up trucking stuff around a lot. And what does that add up to? Hey, if the sales are good, right? For that one trip, I did a $500 sale. Okay, you can do the math on that and figure out, yes, that was worth it. But when I go over there for a $120 sale, it might not be worth it, right? So these are some of the details. A little bit on kind of paperwork. There's maybe an ordering thing. There's an invoicing thing, right? Sure, anybody of us can get a carbon copy and generate a little sales slip, but there's invoicing cost as well. And if I'm selling to a grocery, they might say, hey, we'll pay you in 30 days. All right, that's when you expect the check, as long as sales are good, kind of thing. And which is quite a bit different than I'm at a farmer's market and, oh, that's $10 and you stick it right in my hand. So there's sort of a waiting cost. Opportunities. All right, you guys were good on the first one. What are some opportunities on the wholesale side?
Sometimes less effort in sales and less time investment into the sale.
Less time investment in the sale. We're not sitting at a farmer's market for 5 hours. We might, right?
Higher volume.
Higher volume, right? I think that's a big one.
Less paperwork.
Less paperwork. Okay.
Potentially more consistent sales.
Potentially more consistent sales. Yes. Yeah. Like that. Other ideas? You guys are doing good. You got all these answers here. You see, you don't even need to listen to me, but yes, I agree. I mean, there's the potential for volume, although surprisingly, for somebody that sold to restaurants for about 5 years, I gave them up. I gave them up in part because of low volume and high, let's say, sales effort costs. So again, I'm calling once a week, I'm putting together a price sheet, or I'm writing an email where I'm listing, I don't know, 25 different items. And then lo and behold, the order comes in saying, yeah, I'll take I don't know, 10 pounds of tomatoes, Ryan, and a flat of cherry tomatoes, right? Again, a lot of this is a question about alternatives. Could I have sold that same flat at a retail price at a farmer's market pretty quickly? Yeah, actually, I probably could have. So it depends where you're starting from. But yes, for selling a grocery, selling to the traditional wholesale, that is the promise of wholesale. Volume. We'll up the volume. Cody's mentioned consistency. Yes. Although my restaurants didn't order that much, they were very consistent. We need the salad mix. We need the tomatoes, Ryan, every single week. And maybe if I got so consistent, I'm not even checking in with them, then it's an easy sale, right? And I can consistently deliver that thing. But yes, you see a lot of consistency. My wife manages a grocery store, and that is the name of the game in grocery. I want consistency. I want consistency in ordering. I want consistency in product on the shelf, because when my customers come in, there has to be a green pepper on that shelf consistently. And if you miss the window, I'm sorry, I'm not ordering from you, because lo and behold, I had to order from somebody else to have that green pepper on the shelf. There's a consistency and a rhythm to that type of work. It can have an opportunity, might simplify your life. Some people talk about that, focusing on select crops. I might not do 40 crops. I'm doing 3 crops well for a wholesale market. It might relate. You might have an opportunity to fill in your route. Part of this is finding efficiency. If I'm already driving around the countryside and I'm spending, I don't know, 6 hours in a van delivering produce for CSA or doing farmers market, whatever, boy, oh boy, if I add in a stop at a restaurant or a grocery store or a school for that matter, that is right there where I'm already dropping off for CSA or going to a farmer's market, I'm filling in my route. I'm actually a more efficient trucking company that I'm pretending to be. So this is great. I'm going to stop here for a 5-minute bio break so we can all go to the bathroom, stretch a little bit, walk around, and come back here in 5 minutes and we'll move through some more material. Very good. Okay. I see Cody give me a thumbs up anyways. I'll be back.
There you go.
All right, we're back from the break, people. Here we go. So yeah, I'll move over with a little more of kind of the language of marketing, just to help us think through some costs, and then I'm going to hit my 3 commandments of farm marketing. Yeah, I need to move all of you over to the side. Sorry, you ever present in Zoom, you always get these little faces over to the side. I like you all, but I just need to minimize you. Okay, very good. So again, a little bit of language. Just one thing I'm going to emphasize a bit, and you'll see it in the homework, is this point on marketing costs. And so it's really our cost of selling, right? So we spend money as farm operators to raise vegetables. I put money into fertilizer and land or rent, and there's taxes, and there's a whole bunch of things. And money's put in to raise a pepper. And so marketing costs are the point of, well, like, what are the costs associated with getting that pepper sold and from point A to point B? There are certain direct costs there that I'm going to call, just to bucket it out for you a little bit. We're just called, these are certain cash expenses that are going to be incurred to selling a product. And I'm just going to call them time expenses. Some of us account for our time differently. And especially I've learned talking to other specialty crop operators, this is what kills us. It's the time, right? If you talk to some dairy operators, it's the feed, Brian. It's the feed. That's what's killing us. For us, it's the time. We spend a lot of time on things and we're not good at keeping track of it. That's why I'm just bucket these things out. Cash expenses in terms of marketing costs. We talk about supplies, we talk about mileage, fees. If you have a farmer's market fee, that's a marketing cost. We have in cost of insurance. Bruce mentioned insurance. You might, hey, if you're going to sell to me as Nash Finch, I want to see $2 million of insurance. Well, now you're doing a product liability insurance policy you didn't have before selling at a farmer's market. Some farmers markets have their own insurance, liability insurance, and some people do for farmers markets too. But you have cost of advertising, you have the cost of that packaging. So these are these out of pocket, I'm paying money to do these things in order to get things sold. Second, are time expenses, which if you say, hey, Ryan, my time's worth $30 an hour. And that's great. If you start adding up some of your time, probably your time expenses is a greater expense than these cash expenses. Again, and you can figure out an example where, yeah, I'm trucking some absurd thing. I'm trucking a case of peppers to Georgia from Minnesota. Yeah, your mileage cost is probably bigger than your, I don't know, maybe they're both big, but your mileage cost is really big in that example. Still, there are time expenses, that travel time driving around, selling time sitting at a market, time on the phone with a restaurant person, time talking to a grocery person, time putting together emails, and then packing time, which I put a little asterisk by just because it's kind of a funny one to sort out sometimes. So there are two issues with it. One is oftentimes a lot of us have a hard time teasing out what that total packing time is. So for example, I'm packing 30 CSA boxes, and at the same time, I'm packing 2 little cases over there that are going to go to Manna Food Co-op, the grocery in DL that I sell to. How much time did I spend on that? I don't know. I kind of did it at the same time I was doing all the other boxes. So it's kind of hard to piece it out, right? Is that 7 minutes? Is that 10 minutes, 12? I don't know. And the second part of it really relates to, it's kind of debatable whether that packing time is production cost time or marketing time. And so there's kind of a little bit of a pull back and forth between ag business management people about how you understand that time. Is the time spent in making that 2-layer box really production time? And only after you have that 2-layer box of tomatoes, everything after that is time spent on marketing. I don't know. So it depends how you want to account for it. Second big cost is opportunity cost. And that's often when we're talking about a marketing mix, it's an important cost to consider. Because I'm doing A, I can't do B. Because I'm doing 3 farmers markets, I don't have any room in my life to sell to 4 restaurants. Because I'm doing, a 200 member CSA, I really can't do, I don't know, direct to grocery really well. It's all an opportunity cost. And again, like I was saying, we're going to look at some analysis to help you kind of sort through what some of these costs are and make strategic decisions. Still on the language of marketing, I talked about product mix, what we sell. I think I defined that pretty well earlier. And this really comes down to, what are your customers' needs? What are those customers' needs and wants? Your product mix selling to grocery is going to be different than operating a CSA. It just will. For CSA, that's part of the reason we get into so many different crops. You can't really do CSA very well, in my opinion. This is my opinion, unless you're doing sort of this wider mix of crops. In my thought, it's kind of this 80-20 rule. 80% of those crops and what goes in the box are real staples, but there's 20% kind of special things that sort of make the CSA sort of like, oh, it's like Christmas each week, Ryan. Look at this. I've never tried fennel before. That's part of the reason people like CSA, is that there is this variety, right? And so again, what you're choosing, what your product mix is, really depends on what are those customer needs. And I like to kind of break it out like that: staples versus niche crops, right? The high volume made low margin crops are potatoes, and our low volume, high margin crops like these microgreens, right? I mean, they're just very different. And so you need to make strategic decisions about, you know, what are the crops I'm going to do? And if I'm going to do this wholesale thing well, what is it that I'm going to supply? Right? Because again, an opportunity cost, if I'm doing microgreens well and really paying attention to that, I might not be able to do these staple crops like potatoes and winter squash equally as well. And so we need to find a balance there. So my 3 commandments, if you will, that I think ought to drive our decisions on how we're going to market. So the first one is know thy customer. And it's marketing 101. Just understand your customer, and based on that, you make decisions about how you're going to produce. Too often, those of us as farm operators, because we're product people, we start with the product and then we find the customer. As a marketing person, I would say we're backwards. So you ever hear this guy, Ernesto Ceroli? He's talks like, in terms of business, people are usually one of 3 types of people. Your product people, marketing people, or finance people, right? The people that like kind of want to make the deal and all this kind of stuff and do the finances well and bookkeeping, this kind of thing. But a lot of us that are farm operators are kind of by our nature product people. That is, hey, I can grow the world's best tomato. Hey, I'm really good at growing lettuce. And so we tend to want to say, this is what I grow. Now let me grow it really well. Now let me find a customer who's going to buy it. And I would argue for this type of work, it's important to kind of do our best to be marketing people and start with a customer first, and then make a decision about what is our right product mix to meet the needs of those customers. It's kind of discombobulates people's heads. And I know Brett will be talking about this in his session later on in terms of like, how do we connect with customers, understand them, and kind of meet their needs and communicate with them. But I threw some pictures in here just to illustrate. I found this morning the most intimidating chef picture I could, which was Gordon Ramsay yelling at somebody, right? If you right. So he's over there on the right, like super intimidating chef. What do you got, farmer, for me today? It better be good, kind of thing. And actually, most restaurant people, I haven't found that way, honestly, but I'm sure they're out there. Which is a very different customer in terms of their needs, in terms of products and timing. Timing's extremely important in this situation. Getting that product there after the dinner rush does them no good, right? And also trying to communicate with them during a lunch rush is really no good, right? So it's understanding that flow of their work and understanding them as a customer and their needs is different than our food service director over here on the left, right? And this is my favorite picture because she's like, are you kidding me? She has that look on her face like, are you kidding me? This is a tomato? This is what you're bringing me today, really. And so again, these folks are real food experts, right? And her needs as a food service director are maybe similar to a restaurant person, but still different. All right. I'm feeding 800 kids a day. I have only so much time in terms of purchasing decisions. I only have so much budget. I'm not a white tablecloth restaurant. I'm a publicly funded school, right? So some of those concerns are different, and those needs in terms of products are different. We only want something on the salad bar, Ryan. We don't need your fresh fennel. Don't even bring it up. And all of these folks as wholesale people, I would argue, are a little more food experts than our friendly middle-aged lady that we see at the farmer's market. I know plenty of people I've sold produce to at the farmer's market that I could sell them rocks in a box and they'd be like, that's awesome, Ryan. It's great being here on Saturday morning. It's fabulous. For the most part, a lot of our kind of casual customers in a lot of farmers markets, you can kind of get away with some kind of mediocre product and they're just fine. I call it garden produce, right? If you're growing regular kind of garden produce, I'm just home gardener here. That's kind of clean, kind of good. It doesn't need to be anything special. A lot of folks at farmers markets are just fine with that. If we take it up a notch, we can do better at a farmers market, and we can kind of better meet the needs of those customers. So new customer, get to know them. I think it's about starting a conversation. Like I said, my wife's been a manager at a food co-op, at a grocery store, and this approach here is not dissimilar from some approaches she's had over the years. I have a product right now, and I need top dollar today. Do you want to buy it? I'm sorry, that's a terrible way of introducing yourself. You're not going to get any understanding. It shows just a blanket disregard for the needs of my wife as a customer, or anybody as a customer, that type of approach. It's very direct, I'll give you that. I would argue that a much better approach is earlier in the season. Hey, I've been selling on farmers market for 8 years, 3 years, 2 years. Can we talk about whether I could sell produce to you or what might work for you? To try to get to understand them as a customer and their needs. There's schedules involved, there's product quality involved. And I have found that a lot of people in the food business and produce business are more than happy to engage in this type of polite conversation, as opposed to sort of this, I don't know, emergency, buy this from me now kind of approach. In chat, you want to, or just turn off your mic. What other kind of approaches or questions maybe you've used or you think might be good approaching a new customer or a wholesale customer?
This is Russ. I've tried going into a wholesale, either restaurant or grocery or whatever, and being a customer first and foremost at some of these places and trying to determine, what their needs might be, what quality or what products they might be missing, or, just knowing the customers that are shopping or buying there. Yeah. Trying to fill a niche for them if you can solve a problem for them. And I'll ask them that, like, I've seen this, is that something you could use, or what? And then ask them an open-ended question too, like, what are the things that you would want me to provide or to grow for you? So that's kind of the approach I have taken. Sometimes it's successful, but truthfully, honestly, it's not worked out real well, because the people buying the produce, either at the restaurant or the grocery or whatever, just seems like, I don't know, maybe it's I'm not communicating enough with them long term, but it doesn't seem to keep a lasting sales. And part of it can be outside input from others, like at the grocery stores. I've seen the wholesalers that provide the groceries kind of get in the way of that sometimes too, kind of blocking you. So that's one of my concerns and one of my struggles, I guess. So, but I still think that's a good approach, or at least that's just my feeling.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Russ. I just highlight, I think that approach. I'm a customer first. Nothing stopping you from shopping in a grocery store, right? I'm stopping in, I'm observing, I'm seeing what's on the shelf. I'm looking at the quality that's on the shelf. I'm looking at pricing. And I have open-ended conversation, open-ended questions. I like that, Russ. Although I recognize your point, like there are certainly some other actors engaged, say with a grocery buyer, i.e. their traditional wholesaler, who may not be as friendly to you just showing up and selling things to quote unquote their customer. So yes. Any other approaches that people have tried? Or
we had Gina threw in the chat.
Okay.
I have brought in a sample for them to try.
Great. Samples are always great. Say a nice brochure or a business card plus a sample.
This is Allison. I'm here with my husband right now, and he does this for me frequently through the summer when I've got a glut of produce. And so the top one is wrong. Like, I have this right now. Actually, that is kind of what we do. But he's way better at it. So I'm going to let him tell you what he's done in the past.
Hi, Ryan. It's Scott Ryan. We've met at a few things.
Oh,
I like to do, and I forgive the inappropriateness of this, but I call it pimping veg.
Sure.
And that we're having a buildup of different specialty areas in the Crosby area, Aiken, that kind of stuff. And so what I'll do when Allison has a glut, last year it was basil, and we had pounds and pounds of basil, is that I would go around to these different specialty restaurants and say, can I just a question for you. Can I talk to the chef? I have this. We have more than we need. We'll this is our price per pound. What do you think of this? This is something you'd be interested in. And 99% of the time I'll get a sale. It doesn't have to be all of it, but when she sends you out with 10 pounds and you go to 3 different places and sell all 10 pounds, and it's in the normal course of your day.
Yes.
It seems to be money well spent.
Yeah, very good, Scott. I appreciate that. And one thing I was trying to get across on I like the example of pimping vegetables. I think the thing that didn't come across my example and what's wrong, there's a certain attitude to the top one, right? There's this issue about, I need to sell this now kind of thing, but there's certainly an attitude that comes across. And I'm not hearing that in your attitude. You're like, I'm pimping the vegetables, but I have a good attitude about it. And that's fine. And at some point you just need to make that first connection. So I appreciate it.
And that's what I do. Yeah, and willing to. I'm definitely not for a top dollar on it. I'm like, this is extra, and I'm trying to be reasonable about it, but not charge them a lot. Go ahead, Willalyn.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I already have a relationship with the restaurants and, customers. And so I don't have a problem calling them up and saying, hey, it's the end of the day and we still have a lot of veggies at the farmer's market. Here's what we have. I've done that for Eric too. He's had a lot of leftover lettuce. And so, I'd go around the restaurants and ask them, we have extra vegetables left. What are you willing to pay for them?
Right. So there's this flexibility in pricing. There's a pre-existing relationship. Yep. So again, all of these things are factors, and over time you understand that customer more and more, right? After they're like, I got the leftover lettuce last week. It was fine the day of, but didn't hold 3 days later. That's sort of this conversation and this back and forth, customer and supplier, that really needs to happen, right?
If you start to treat it like it's more of a long-term, you're working for a long-term relationship goal, and you bring them in a piece of high quality veg and say, hey, is there anything you want that you're not getting appropriately now? Is there something? I know people, and I think I can get you supplied. You can build on that, and maybe you don't have that growing, but someone else does. And we're always so afraid that we're going to sell ourselves out of the market, but the reality is the market is so much bigger than we think it is. So having that ability to supply that, you're going to build more of a customer base, even if you're not selling all your veg or not.
Exactly, and that's building relationships with the restaurants. Also, if there are other things that they want, I usually ask what other things they want, and I have a base of farmers that grow those, and that's how I connect with our farmers at the farmers market.
Right on. Great. I think that's a good point. This market it's pretty big. The food market's big, folks. And how can we do this collaboratively and do this in the long term? I do want to emphasize that this is long-term relationship for consistent sales over time is really a great way of approaching it in order to build a business over time. I think that's an important thing I would like to emphasize. Myself, for anything I do, I always say I should give it 2 or 3 years. For 2 years, I did like a custom CSA, and I said, you know what, that ain't working, and I killed it. And so there's something to be said, like everything takes a little bit of time to get going and to get sort of that longer term relationship and back and forth and communication going. And so you need to give it a little bit of effort to say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do this for a while to see if this really does work or not. I would definitely not advise saying, you know what, Ryan, we did this wholesale readiness thing. I talked to 2 restaurants. They said no. Screw it. You know, I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a good faith effort. It's about really pounding a little pavement to find a couple of those restaurants who are at least going to talk to you maybe in year 1 that you might do some selling to at the end of year 1 and some more selling in year 2 to really sort of say, I'm going to give this a good faith effort because I need to diversify our product, our marketing stream. So commandment 2, let me get through the commandments and we'll have a couple more activities. Know thy product, right? One example, no, I won't even tell that example because I'm getting long and I'm too talkative. One, I think it's very important is that people, as the grower, people see you as the expert. And so I want you to be the expert and know the details, if you will. I've seen so much bad interaction at markets, for example. It just drives me, it's like a pet peeve of mine. You know, my favorite was the goat milk soap lady who was asked what her favorite soap was of what she was selling. And she says, yeah, I don't know. I don't use this stuff. I just sell it. I get my soap from Walmart, which is just like, oh my God, lady, what are you doing here? Kind of moment. And instead, what people react to is those folks that take pride in the product, know their product, use their product, know the details of their product. And a lot of that is for when we're talking about wholesale packaging size and pricing. Again, we have a separate module on packaging. This question about pricing, I'm going to hit in a little bit about to have in your mind, what kind of pricing can you do? And a lot of this just comes down to only having, we have some good farm records and where we've been previously in terms of our margin, it will give us some idea. What is the seasons? What are the timings? When are those cherry tomatoes ready? Is it 2 weeks or 4 weeks or what? And what varieties and what pricing are those? What is that in terms of product? What is that process? If you're in communication with a buyer, what is the buying process? Am I ordering from you every Tuesday and you're delivering every Thursday? Does it hit and miss? Does it change over time? This is essentially maybe not your product, but your process, your service to your customer. In terms of product, it is about consistency and consistency of quality, if you will. Are we meeting your quality standard? Is a great question for a customer. We want to meet your quality standard. We want the product to hold on the shelf. If it's a grocery example, we want your customers to be dazzled by it. If it's on a plate at a restaurant, we want to make sure that these kids are at least paying attention or somewhat interested in those cherry tomatoes that are on the salad bar. Is this the right quality? Is it holding for you? Is it working for you? And part of that comes down to knowing yourself. What is it that you grow well? You may not in year 1 say, you know what, I'm going to start growing avocados and selling those wholesale, although I've never sold or grown an avocado before in my life or an artichoke in my life. It's probably not a good place to start. It's probably better to start with a crop that you know well and grow well. And again, that is informed by customer expectations. And lastly, in terms of knowing your product is where you fit within the market. So when you have that conversation with that grocer, just say, hey, you know, this is new to me. Do you have a produce price sheet that you work off of? I want to get some idea whether, you know, my prices could be comparable if this makes sense. And you know, you're just being very open and transparent about them. This is new to me. I would give you a grocery produce price sheet the next day. I mean, they get them every single week, right? It's knowing where you fit within the market is important. Are those cherry tomatoes that you're selling at the market, are they $2 different than the local grocery store? Are they, you know, I mean, if you can't reach that price, can you reach a wholesale price? It might be out of your range if that's where your pricing needs to be. And only you can determine where your pricing needs to be based on your own farm finances. So that's kind of part of the sticky wicket. And I will say this, just as a tidbit of fact, because a lot of times people are confused, like, what is a grocery store paying for produce? Typically, it's between 30 and 40% margin, right? So if you took the final price and you multiplied by 0.6 or 0.7, that's a reasonable range about what they're paying their supplier for the product. That's a pretty typical range of for produce at a grocery restaurant. I don't know as much. Lastly, know thy costs, and we're going to dig into this the rest of the time. We talk about marketing costs. I think I got a handle on it. We have production costs, right? And so what's important for you to know is where your margin's at. And this is just, I don't know, it's a record keeping and farm finance analysis. It's adding up your costs and putting that in comparison to your current sales. So if you understand your current margin, net revenue, you take your total sales and you subtract both those production and marketing costs and you divide it by sales. So usually put it as a percent. That's a real basic formula there. So, hey, I did $50,000 in sales last year, but you know what? I spent $10,000 in marketing costs and I spent $30,000 in production costs, which is $40,000, 40,000. 50 minus 40 is 10,000. 10,000 divided by 50 is, I don't know what. That's my margin. A general benchmark that we've seen when we've done some farm finance analysis with farms is it's wide. There's a lot of variation. I'm going to say that anywhere from I'm not making any money at 8% margin or negative up to, I don't know, 70% margin. But again, a reasonable benchmark is somewhere in that 30 to 40% margin after we take care of all costs. So when we think about,
Ryan,
yeah,
quick on that. When you say all costs, does that include labor?
Well, see, that's the squishy thing. In this instance, with some of these numbers I'm going to show you later, Russ, they included labor marketing costs, but they did not include labor production costs for the proprietor. So we got to make sure we have an apples comparison. In this, I would say no. 30 to 40% that we're including all cash expenses, no doubt. You could be in upwards of 50% margin, but not including your own direct labor costs. So I think as long as you're handling those things consistently, that's really what matters. And that's sort of your own internal controls. Does that answer it, Russ?
Yeah. So if you're hiring someone, those costs are in there, but not
those
your
costs
own
are in
labor,
there, yes.
but not your own labor.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're having to pay yourself out of that 30 to 40% margin, basically.
That's right.
And the farm.
Yeah, but this would be over and above all overhead costs and direct costs. So
Okay.
you're covering your cash expenses for farm operation, and it gets complicated if you have multiple enterprises, right? I do cattle and I do produce. Well, I'm not even looking at the cattle. I'm handling the overhead costs that relate to produce, and I'm handling all cash expenses related to the produce enterprises. And this is what's over and above that. And so again, this is not dissimilar from what we're going to see at a retail example either. That benchmark with people do a lot of things for a 30% margin, I always say. I'm always surprised when I do some math with a farm operator and we come into this same range. So I'm just trying to give you some reasonable range that you're shooting for over and above your direct costs.
And I don't want to ask too many questions here, and
yeah.
I can wait, but just in general, I was looking at some ERS data and it talked about how farms, after including labor costs, if you can't meet at least a 10% margin for the farm after all those costs, that's a pretty good cue that you're not going to be sustainable long term. And some of the, anything between 10 and 30% is, sustainable. And then the top tier of farmers were between 30 and 40% margins. Is that consistent with what you guys have seen or whatever, where you're keeping at least 10% margin for the farm to reinvest and, basically improve your farm?
Yeah. I'm not going to dig into those weeds right now, Russ. What I will say is this is the one point I'm going to make on it to really hammer it home. It's really important that you do your own farm financial analysis on your operation. Eric Highmark is on this call, who is a farm business management instructor out of Central Lakes College. And I know he has scholarships to enroll in his program. If you are interested in digging into, I want the balance sheet for my farm operation, I want an income statement and an enterprise analysis just for our produce side of things, Eric will work with you one-on-one to make sure you get those numbers completed and done. So the most important numbers are the ones you do yourself. And so I'm just gonna hammer at that, leave it at that. All sales created equal? I say no. From the research that we did have, about 29% of all expenses were marketing related when we looked at 10 to 12 different farm operators in central Minnesota. And so again, looking at this marketing mix and really being strategic about what we engage in is important. From this same study, what we did is we added both labor costs and direct costs to total the marketing costs by market channel for these farm operations. Not all of them were engaged in all of these outlets or market channels, but this is how it laid out. So this is the return over marketing costs. And so as a margin, if you look at me standing by that farm stand, it says 84%. What that means is for every $1 of sale that you got on the farm stand, 16 cents of that dollar went to these marketing costs. The time stocking it, the transportation, which isn't really on a self-serve farm stand, doesn't exist, as well as like pulp trays and other supplies and those kinds of things at the farm stand. 33% at a farmer's market, in large part because a lot of labor costs were involved. And if you put, $10 to $15, I forget what we used there, per hour for man hours spent in a farmer's market, there's a lot of time spent in there. 70% with food hubs and wholesale on the right, 72% return over marketing costs for restaurants, 39 for grocery, 41 and 61 for CSA. So for when we examined these farm operations, there definitely was a mix in terms of the returns they had over marketing costs in their market channel. When we did that market channel analysis. So I want to get you to this getting strategic part, because this is really what matters. And it's freaking 11 o'clock. So let's stop being so wordy, Ryan. So what makes the most sense for you? I think there's two main components here. Getting strategic about, when it comes to wholesale, what should I engage in? What should I do? There's a dollars and cents side of it, and then there's this squishier fit side of it. I'm gonna start with the fit. Fit really relates to what are your management goals. Sometimes a fit relates to, I have a sales goal that I need to meet. You know what? We've been sitting here doing farmers markets. We're sitting at $12,000 a year. We really, in order to make this thing work, we really need to get closer to 40,000, 35,000 in sales annually to make this work. And so that might be a reason I'm going to engage in wholesale and find other customers. Might relate to our mission, might relate to the efforts you already have underway, right? Does your selling to this restaurant complement what you're doing with your farm stand, which is down the block from that restaurant, right? That's a nice complementary thing. Does it, or would you engage, say, in restaurant sales in part because you're like, can you put this table tent on your restaurant tables? Because that would really complement my marketing efforts that I'm doing at the farm stand, at the CSA and all this. There's a nice complementary way. Is it manageable or doable, right? Hey, like I said, 6-7 years ago, I cut my Saturday farmers market. I cut out restaurants, in part because it wasn't doable or manageable anymore with the other things I was doing. So you can strategically decide like, you know what, this is too much. Or you know what, maybe doing wholesale is going to be more manageable and fit better into my flow of life than all these other things I have going on. It's a way of simplifying your life. Great. You know, there's a reason to do it. Does it build on your current skills or knowledge? You might have worked in restaurants, you know that well. You might have worked in grocery, you know that well. You might be good at sales, in which case those conversations Russ was talking about, and you know, I'm game to go do cold calls or to go do what do you say, veggie pimping, Scott? Hey, that fits right in. You're good. Go for it. Does it fit within your life or your life or your family's life? Right? Just because you can make a sale doesn't mean you should. And lastly, I really think that does relate to your current development stage of your farm. You know, I'm going to come back to the other thing, you know, to really just put it in the context. You know, I really think that you just you sort of, you know, crawl before you jog before you run kind of deal. And so I'm always thinking, you know, in terms of farms, you know, is this your next best step? Considering where you're at right now, is this your next best step? And so here's a young Ryan Pesch. I look all worn out now. I'm 45 and I've been farming for 20 years, but look at me then. I'm just a kid. This is kind of hard to look at. My daughter's now 18. That's her first year farmers market in 2004 on the right with my wife. Oh man. But my stage of development there was I'm growing on a half an acre and I'm just going to do this farmers market well. Thank you very much. I wasn't trying to shoot for the moon and sell to 18 different places. I didn't have those skills or capacity yet. Here's Ryan. Here's a skinny little Ryan who's all of 23 years old this is 24 at my very first farmers market in Northeast Minneapolis. Grew in Lake Elmo, sold in Northeast Minneapolis, right across from Emily's Lebanese Deli and Central Avenue. Where's that university? You know, hey, what were my goals then? I was trying to do one farmer's market and do it well. My goal was to pay for the equipment and break even. In that first year, I bought a wheel hoe, an earthway seeder, and I spent $500 on a Ford Ranger pickup that had 280,000 miles on it. And I bought a canopy. My goal was to get experience. And as a result, you know, we did $3,200 in sales in year one and over 12 market days. And I did a bit better than breaking even. So was it wildly successful? No, but it definitely fit where I was at my first year after being a farm apprentice for 2 years. I was out on my own and I felt like, you know what, I want to give this a try. And I did give it a try. And heck, here I am. I'm still back to doing farmers markets 20 years later. And so, you know, where you're at matters. What is that next best step? And I hope as you're thinking about wholesale that you're like, you know what, Ryan, I feel good about how we're growing. And I think, you know, doing something with the wholesale market is my next best step. Or, you know what, maybe I'm not ready to sell to that direct wholesaler or wholesale broker, but I can do restaurants or I can do one grocery store. That's my next best step. And in year two, I might do 2 grocery stores or I might do 3 restaurants. That would be my next best step the following year. So I really, really like to emphasize where you're at matters and your stage of development matters. And you grow into these skills and abilities and production over time. So I want to do this in terms of fit. Does somebody want to volunteer? Someone want to volunteer to talk about how they currently sell things? Come on.
I do.
Okay, Allison, very good. So this is going to be part of your homework. So we're going to demonstrate it. It's called grading your marketing outlet. Okay. Number 1, if you give it a 1, it totally sucks. Okay. This is not, we're talking about pimping vegetables. But anyways, this totally sucks. But number 10 goes up to freaking awesome. Okay. And so then we have these different categories. We have pricing. Is the pricing great? Is the pricing bad? Insurance, other requirements. Geez, these guys asked me to do all this stuff. Is it good or bad? Packing expectations, time and travel, the total amount of sales at that outlet. And do you generally like it? You might go to the farmer's market and you're like, I hate my fellow vendors. These people drive me nuts. In which case you're going to give it a 1 or a 2. Or you're like, you know what? I love going there every Saturday. It's great. I'm going to give it a 10. So Allison, let's grade a market here. What do you got?
Saturday farmers market.
There you go. Saturday farmers market. Pricing. How's the pricing for you?
I would say a 6 or a 7.
Okay.
We're not getting top dollar in our community because we generally have a low income community.
Okay.
The insurance is not burdensome. I get the FM or MFMA insurance.
Mhm.
I think that's $200. So I'd give that like that's a 9.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Like, because it's good insurance for a little cost. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I put it as a requirement. I'd put it like at a 2 then, because it's not burdensome. That's how I was thinking about it. But yeah,
Oh,
I get your
yeah,
point.
okay.
I get your
Yeah.
point. Product expectations, high expectations. High expectations would be low. Low expectations would be high. It's sort of like the ease of the expectations.
The ease of the expectations are a 5. I'd say they're right in the middle. Travel. You were talking about time just for travel or time to sit at the farmer's market?
Well, since you're talking about the farmer's market, you're talking about the time spent getting to and hanging out at the farmer's
And
market.
hanging out. It totally sucks.
Okay. It
I
totally
hate it.
sucks. There we go. A clear 1. Very good. How about the total sales you took in at the Saturday farmer's market last
Yeah,
year?
total sales are not great either. Let's give them a 6 to be generous, because they're a little bit better than a 5.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And for the most part, I like the customers and my fellow vendors, but I do not like the location. I don't like the sound. I don't like the wind. I don't like, so I would still give it a 1. I do not like it at all.
Great.
Hey, Ryan, this is Jane. Can I just ask you to clarify the insurance thing? Because Allison said that was good, but you put it in as a 2, which is almost totally sucks.
Oh, yeah, maybe I'm reading it wrong. Yeah, she says a 9. No, I was thinking of it opposite. So it's like, I was sort of thinking like in a wholesale environment, right? Hey, we need a $2 million insurance policy. It's going to cost a lot of money. We give it a 1 because it's like, this really sucks. It's burdensome. But that's right. Allison did say it's not burdensome at all and wanted a 9. It's a 9. That makes sense, Jane. Yes. I'm thinking of it wrong. I'm thinking of my own example wrong.
Yeah, just got to make sure we're not confusing everybody else on the call.
Yeah.
So thanks. Got it.
Gotcha. Very good. And so this is one piece of the homework. We want everybody to kind of grade your own market, and then we put a total over here, right? So 11, 13, 22, 28. Now that's a pretty abstract thing. You're like, is a 28 good or bad, Ryan? Right? The higher, the better. But what really matters here is you're grading all of your markets. So again, this is kind of hard if you have no markets at all. But it seems like a lot of us do already have some existing outlets that we're selling to. And what matters is, am I grading my Saturday farmers market higher or lower than my Thursday one? Just go through in a most kind of consistent way you can, grade these things from high to low and look at your totals and say, which one has a good fit? Which one's fitting well for me, looking across these items? And over in the margin, you might say, there's this total other issue over here that is also driving me crazy, or is absolutely great about this market. Put it in the margin, right? The idea is to get you to kind of think strategically about how well each of these outlets fit into your life and fit into your business. Some might be more onerous than others. And so you're trying to grade how this is going. Next, the dollars and cents. Geez, Ryan, you're at 11 something. Stop being so wordy. What's important is you find your cost of production if you don't already have it. And so for some people, that's a big lift. Like, geez, Ryan, I don't even know where to start with that. And for others of you, you do this every single year. And since there's such a mix of us, I just said, you can at least start with rough math for your whole operation, right? I'm going to do good, better, best, just to get people started on something. Sales minus your total costs, that's a place to start, right? I made this much last year. I spent this much last year. It's good. Got to start somewhere. A little better is, hey, these are my sales last year, and I'm going to break out those costs between, remember, the marketing costs and the production costs. My fertilizer is a production cost. My driving back and forth to the farmer's market, that's a marketing cost. At least start bucketing out marketing costs and production costs. Best is if we get to the point where we have our sales and costs by every market channel or every outlet. And in that way, we can start saying, hey, this is how this outlet is performing. That's how this market channel is performing. And that's really going to give us some insight about whether we do more of that market channel. Are we tapped out on it? Do we find a new one, or does this one totally suck and we need to find something else? And so just to get you thinking about how to just approach this math across different market channels. Okay, that next slide didn't work. My one point was part of that is you need to set up some consistent chart of accounts and buckets of things that you're tracking. Are you splitting out fertilizer from supplies, and which types of supplies? This doesn't show us anything for some reason. That's my little ledger disappeared on us. And I'm happy to engage with anybody in terms of like setting up a reasonable chart of accounts to track these things. And one other way of approaching different market channels, should I do more of this or less of this? Should I take this new one on or not? Is to do a partial budget. If you already know what your numbers are and you're trying to like spitball a decision, should I do this new market channel and how would it impact the farm? Oftentimes we're making marginal changes to our operations. A partial budget's a good way of doing it in terms of looking at the total revenues that it might bring in, or are there any costs it's going to reduce, or are there any additional costs that we're going to incur by taking it on, or are there any revenues that we're reducing by taking it on? And so this is just sort of a rubric that you can use to think through, should I take on this new wholesale market channel or not? But that's not part of the homework, so I'm going to get to that. This is some data from that same marketing analysis I was showing earlier in terms of those returns over marketing costs. And the one thing I really want to emphasize here, I will put this report into that folder if you want to peruse it and look at these farm finances for specialty crop operators in Minnesota. The one thing I really want to emphasize here is that look at the range on these things. If you see here, gross revenue per acre, we look at all farms, it ranges from $1,500 an acre to $46,000 an acre. That is a very wide range. And the thing I want to emphasize is that us as specialty crop operators are a little different from our kind of row crop operators and specialty crop or commodity crop operators, because we have very different production systems. There are definitely people doing urban farming intensively on very small pieces of ground that have very high sales per acre, doing some very specialty crops. And we have people that are, using mechanized production over with wide spacing in big areas that have kind of a low value per acre operation. And so it's not like one is better than the other. It's just that they're very different. And that's why it's important that you do your own numbers. And you see that gross margin is similar to what, from 3 to 81%. And that's similar to that benchmark I was looking at before with Russ. But this is what I wanted to get you to. I'd introduce it on the introductory webinar back in October, but it's this marketing mix analysis. And so I'm going to put a spreadsheet into our folder for you to do this for your own outlets and to do your own marketing mix analysis. And just to orient you a little bit about how this is done, say, here's an example of somebody that's selling at 2 farmers markets, have a farm stand, sell to a grocery, and they sell to a school. What we want to do is be very consistent across each of these in laying out our marketing costs, have our revenues, and I'm going to have the spreadsheet do the math for you to get your net return and then your return over marketing costs. So that the idea is at the bottom, you should be able to say, okay, we consistently did this measurement. And if we're only looking at marketing costs, assuming that we're keeping production costs consistent or constant, this is the differential, right? We're getting a greater return at the school than we are from that nearby grocery. Should we keep this or drop it? And this is going to be specific to the cost related to that outlet, right? This is a school that's 12 miles away, and you're going to do the mileage from 12 miles to your farm round trip kind of thing. This doesn't mean that it's good for all schools. If there's a school that's 40 miles away, you're going to have a different return on your marketing costs, if you will. So you'll see this spreadsheet, and what you're going to do is, what were your sales at that outlet last year? And it's going to ask you cell by cell about your marketing costs. What was your mileage? That is, what is your cost? What is your mileage round trip to and from that outlet? What's your time at that outlet? And what's your time of travel? Do you have any fees? And do you have any associated supplies? So for example, hey, I sell to this grocery and I bought all of these cardboard boxes last year for these 2-layer tomato boxes, and I spent $60 just for those grocery sales, right? You're going to have that supply cost in here as a post-harvest supply cost. Or I have a fee for a farmer's market. It's going to be in this spreadsheet. So we have all those marketing costs listed with an estimate of your time and all those direct out of pocket cash expenses. And so that's kind of your analysis, is to do those things. Grade your current outlets with that worksheet I did with Allison. Compare and contrast. That's where the learning is. Do these numbers confirm or surprise you? You know, what does this make you think about whether you're going to keep that outlet or not? And you might choose to say, you know what, I'm done with that farmer's market, and that's fine. And then we do the marketing mix analysis. I have a fact sheet in there about doing it. And then you're going to have, there's a spreadsheet in there for you can put in your own numbers. Plug in the estimate and do the best you can. If you're here and you say, I have no outlets at all, I have no numbers at all, Ryan, I would love for you to do a thought experiment with a potential customer. Take a target wholesale operator, like, hey, I could sell to that grocery, 20 miles from me, and what would that look like? Just put those numbers in there as to try to get you to kind of think it through. You could put in a couple of examples. I'm selling to this restaurant or that grocery. I'm selling to this school and that school. Just plug in some numbers and do an estimate as best you can. And the idea is you do this, and next time we're back together, at the beginning, we want to review. We want to hear your insights from doing this exercise at our next gathering. So you can ask me hard questions after this. You can email me. You can talk to me. That's all good. But I've talked enough. So I'm going to stop sharing since everyone's now fallen asleep out there. And Jane's going to take us to our next, cue us up for our next session.
Yeah, so everybody, if you want to just stretch for like a minute, then we'll go into the closing. And yeah, let's take 2 minutes.
Jane, you just muted yourself.
Oh, sorry. Yep, 2 minutes. Let's come back at 11:22 to close out after you've had a chance to stand up and stretch for just a sec.
glad to hear I kept you awake there, Rachel. I kept a few people awake. Yes, you will get the PowerPoint. I'm gonna have maybe Emily, would I put that in the same place I put the homework assignments? I think Emily and Jane are going to hit some of those details about where all this stuff is going to live. But yes, we want you to have access to all these things.
Yeah, okay, so let's go into the closing part for a little bit. The thing I want to do here is to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the technology for how you access parts of this project. So, so one of the things is that, well, here we'll just quickly go through the next steps. So the next session will be coming up in 2 weeks. That'll be February 7th, and that will be about production and scaling up production for a wholesale situation. And that will be led by Natalie Hoydal. Here's what the next session format is going to be like, and this will be kind of consistent now for the next 5 sessions. We'll have a review of the previous week's content. So Ryan will just go back and hit the highlights, and then we'll have breakout groups where we'll be asking you to share where you're at with your homework assignment. So even if you feel confused, if you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing with it, do something, put some numbers in there. It doesn't have to be perfect, because we'll work on honing it and fixing problems with it, you know, really throughout the whole year. You'll be able to go back and refine it. But get started, because we'll talk about it in the breakout groups. Then we'll come back and do report outs and have discussion with Ryan offering some insight. Then we'll have the presentation of the next topic, which will be production. And that assignment will be given. So here's where I want to make sure everybody can get to this, this link. And I put it in the chat earlier, but Emily, if you would be able to grab it and drop it into the chat quickly. So once it's in the chat, I would like everybody to go to that link. And I am actually going to go to it myself so that I can show you what I want you to look at. Oh, and I was editing the page, so you're seeing edit stuff on here for me that you won't see when you're in it yourself. But could everybody like raise your hand with the reactions little button on your toolbar, or raise your hand or give some indication that you're in there? Okay, some people got their hands up. And if you're having trouble finding it and need some one-on-one help, put your name in the chat so that we know to get back to you and help you find these materials. Okay, so this is your online landing page for the project. And then the course logistics document that Emily showed earlier is a link right here. So if you're on that page, click on that link and make sure you can get into that course logistics document. And again, put in the chat if you're having trouble, if you weren't able to get into it. These are things in Google Documents, and Google is always a little tricky with settings to make sure that people who are supposed to be able to access it can access it. So if we need to tweak those settings, we need to know if anyone's having trouble. Okay. And then tracking progress. So we've been saying all along that part of what we're going to do in this project is really push you to do the things, because we all know, we've all done it. We've gone to a workshop or a conference and we've heard some great things. We're like, oh yeah, I should totally do that. get home, you have 25 things that have to be done right now, and you just never get around to implementing the great idea. So our plan here is to push you to do the things. And so we are going to ask you to actually submit your homework. And there's this business planning form. Emily's going to set up forms for each homework that you're given. And so you'll be able to upload it here so that the project team can see how you're doing. Because our goal is also not to leave you hanging or out trying to thrash your way through the wilderness. You know, if your homework shows that you're not getting it, then we can come back and help you out. Okay. That is what I've got. Any questions? Anybody want to unmute and share? And
Hey, Jane, this is Ryan.
Yep.
So will there be a link to another folder that would have, say, the files I want to share with people on that same
that's
page?
actually in the course logistics document.
Okay. Oh, I got you.
Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and bookmark that course logistics document so you can go directly to it, that's fine. But if you don't know how to do that, or you lose the link or you forget, you can come back to this landing page and link to the course logistics. And then all the other links you should need will be in there. So
Is that one linked on that page you just showed us, the course logistics?
yes, it's on the web page.
Okay, very good. All right.
Yeah. So here on the course logistics document is that shared Google folder where you can get at the content, and we'll get the recording of this session in there as soon as we can after we're done here. And Ryan's materials will be there too. So if everybody wants to try out that shared folder and make sure that you can get into it. That would be good as well. And I'll just show you what it should look like. Okay, and then Ryan, you'll be putting your other spreadsheet thing in there to calculate the gross margin.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Brett, did you want to take the last 1 minute to tee something up?
Sort of. I think that one of the things we're going to run into coming up is that we're going to want to start making some of those connections before the April time period in which I'm going to be presenting. So I think I'm going to put together a couple of items and maybe have that ready by next session in order that we can get a jump on that. Because if we wait till the end, then maybe what we plant and what Natalie works with us on won't match the actual customer that we're going to end up wanting to work with, that wholesaler. So there's a little bit of flying the plane as we build it that's going to be involved. So we might get some of that, but I think we'll wait until next week and I'll either steal a couple minutes from Ryan or a couple from Natalie, or maybe both, to get that, to make sure that it's in our minds that we're matching production with potential channel.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It is 11:31 and I'm going to let you all go get on with your day. And thank you so much for being here. Our contact information is all in that project logistics sheet that you can access. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions and get going on that homework from Ryan, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.